Welcome. You're listening to The Aligned Self, Conversations in Creating a Conscious and Abundant Life. This is Daniel Denovi. I'll be your guide and host. Let's see just where we can take this. Hello, friend, and welcome in. I don't know about you, but I just totally dig that bass line. And that is actually performed by Mickey Santamaria. He's an international bass player, and you'll find a link to his YouTube site at the bottom of the podcast description. Go check it out. And if you're interested in learning how to play bass, he actually has a school, and I've actually been considering it, picking it up. It's a lot easier to practice the bass than it is the trombone, which I played in an earlier incarnation in this life. I toured Europe with a symphony wind band, 8 different countries, played to standing ovations, and it was just a phenomenal experience, and music is such a wonderful part of my life. And I had just realized a couple days ago that for some reason I have fallen off the wagon in listening to music, recreationally. Now, I've never been a big radio fan, but I love programming the music that goes into my ears. There were many, many nights when I would lay in bed or lay in my chair or on the floor in my room, listening to CDs, listening to records, and now MP3s. I probably have 40,000 songs on my computer. And I know it sounds like a lot, but it really isn't that many. I promise. But it was the other night when my wife went up early to take a nice hot bath, and I decided to clean the kitchen. And so while I was washing dishes and putting them away, and I had the virtual assistant play some music, and I played music from a long time ago, the 70s and the 80s. I really haven't listened to those songs in years, many decades, and I still remembered all the words. It just totally amazed me, and I realized that I needed to spend more time just listening to music, just for the sake of it, just for the pleasure of it. Not while I'm doing something, just sitting and listening to music. Now, what's interesting is that I never realized that this was an actual practice, a meditative practice called deep listening. And it's typically done around classical music, but you can steal the concept and apply it to anything that you enjoy listening to. Now, one of the privileges of having a background in music is that I can identify all the different instruments and the different melodies that are going on, and I hear things in between the lines, in the background, in underneath, several layers under the surface. So that's just a rich experience that I've not afforded myself in quite a while, and I think I'm going to be more indulgent in that area and listen just for the pleasure of listening. Now, I did not mean for this podcast to be all about music. It just kind of took off from when I introduced Mickey Santamaria. What I really wanted to talk about is living the epic life. And if you've listened to any of the podcasts so far, you know that I sign off on every podcast with follow your bliss and live the epic life, live the epic adventure. And I wanted to explain why I say that. What do I mean by the epic adventure? Now, understand that I used to lead a workshop called Unleashed and Unstoppable with the Firewalk. I haven't done that for about 5 years now. And frankly, I found out that my enthusiasm wasn't the same for it anymore. Building the fires, walking across the hot coals, it was almost 600 times I've done that. And it just didn't seem to have the same appeal anymore. But the Unleashed and Unstoppable was a 2-day workshop, and I'm going to bring it back, but in a week-long intensive. And it's just a mind-blowing thing that I've set up. And I just might kick it off this fall. And we'll see how things pan out with the whole COVID thing and that policy. But I digress. So at the beginning of every workshop, I would ask the participants, by show of hands, how many of you prefer to live the epic life, are shooting for the epic life compared to the mediocre life? And would you believe every person, every time, raised their hands that they wanted to live the epic life? Who wants to live a mediocre life, really? Then I had everyone put their hands down, and then I asked the second question. By comparison, if you take an assessment of your current life, can you call it epic? And only one or two people raised their hand. Now, I don't know about you, but that, for me, begs a question. If you want the epic life, if you want the grand adventure, why are you not living the epic life? Why are you not living the grand adventure? Well, again, I don't know about you, but I ponder such things. I ponder such questions all the time. And I ruminate over this stuff. I ruminate over what does it take to live an extraordinary life? Because I decided back in my teens that I wanted to have an extraordinary life. My greatest fear that my life would turn out to be ordinary. Well, as a consequence, it definitely has not been ordinary. And that's because in looking at that question, looking at how easy is it to fall into the pull of the mundane and the ordinary life, because reality, quote unquote, the day-to-day world, going to your job, paying the bills, feeding everyone, cleaning things up, it's not necessarily the fodder for an epic adventure. And if you haven't listened to Living Your Purpose a couple podcast episodes ago, then this might not make the same amount of sense, but it's in how you're being when you're doing those things, when you're washing the dishes. I use it as a meditation. I want to have as much fun doing these ordinary things as possible, even when I have to plunge the toilet. And living in a house with two teenage boys, two young men, it seems to happen a lot more often than I'd like to admit. But you can find joy in doing anything. So part of it is our attitude, our mindset. The other, I think, that an extraordinary life or the grand adventure, the epic adventure, seems more like a wish for a lot of people rather than a commitment. And this Friday, my 5-Minute Friday, this one coming up, I'll be talking about commitment in a little more depth. But we just haven't made the decision. See, every moment of every day, we get to make a choice for greatness, for the epic adventure, or for mediocrity. We always get to choose, and sometimes having an epic life or doing the adventure seems like a lot more work. And you might say, I just don't have the energy for the epic life today. And how often have you made a decision, and I know I've been guilty of it from time to time, of doing just enough to get by? Just enough to satisfy the moment, just enough to put an end note to the day. It really doesn't take that much effort, though. A little bit more follow-through, a little bit more oomph, a little bit more elbow grease to be excellent, to have an extraordinary outcome. It just occurred to me that I skipped over something that I always like to do at the front end of a discussion like that, and that is to clarify the distinction, clarify the terms that we're talking about. So what does it mean to be epic, to live epically? Well, the dictionary says epic is heroic, majestic, impressively great, spectacular, very impressive, awesome. Now, personally, I don't think it has to be that grandiose. I think it can be just incremental improvements. If you're always leaning in the direction of the epic adventure, then more often than not, things are going to turn out in a marvelous, phenomenal way, wouldn't you say? At the very core of it, or the foundation of it, is a mindset. It is choosing to live the epic life. It is actually entertaining the idea of what would the epic life look like, feel like, sound like from your day-to-day. It is asking a daily question. What do I have to do today to make this an epic, amazing adventure? How do I have to be, more accurately? See, it's how we're being, it's the attitude, it's the mindset that makes life, makes the day epic. You can have what looks like from outside appearances a normal drive to the office or to the workplace, yet you're listening to the Aligned Self podcast. You're plotting to have an epic life inside this little container traveling down the road. Well, my point is that it doesn't matter what it looks like from the outside. It's what's going on inside of you. Does it feel amazing? Does it feel epic to you? If not, then we might want to consider a different approach to our day. Now, something that makes a difference for me is utilizing the concept of living an adventure. Now, to me, an adventure is something extraordinary, something unknown. And if you really think about it, even though you think you know how the day's going to go, we really don't know. We really don't know who we're going to encounter, what we're going to go up against, what kind of conversations we're going to have. Like, we just don't know. And to me, that's so exciting. Isn't that exciting to you? Seriously. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. Like, you don't know who's going to talk to you today. You don't know what amazing things are going to come up for you. And it's just extraordinary when you think about all the possibilities that could be in store for you. Each and every day can literally be an adventure. So I just don't want you to take my word for it. This week, the next 2 weeks, I want you to practice living an epic life. Declare the next 2 weeks are going to be an epic adventure. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 different nights. You can have something simply amazing to eat, something different from the ordinary, something that you really like and is good for you, if there's such a thing. You can do what my wife and I did the last full moon. We went 24 hours unplugged from the computer, the phone, everything electronic except the coffee maker. But it was primarily any device that normally absorbed our attention. Now, I need to be completely authentic and admit that I did pick up my phone at one point and completed a conversation with a new client coming on board for my Align Self Signature program. But I thought that was pretty epic in and of itself. She's excited. I'm excited. I can't wait to get started. Incidentally, I do have another program that's starting June 10th, and then another one, there's going to be a much bigger rollout on August 20th. And if you're not sure what the Align Self program is, it's my signature program. It's a 12-week program where I lead people through the process of identifying their highest priorities of life and then aligning their behavior and their life, their beliefs, their habits, everything in alignment congruently with their highest priorities of life, and essentially redesigning who you are for the world and actually choosing your self-identity for the very first time. And I say the first time is because it's been my experience that most people have a default sense of who they are, something that they've inherited or been handed to them along their path of into adulthood. And it is literally 0.5% of the entire population on the planet that have ever consciously chosen who they want to be for the world and for themselves. There's such tremendous power in it. I don't even have the words to convey how much it changes your experience of life for the better. If you want to learn more about the Align Self program, go to my webpage, yesdaniel.com, and click the link to learn more about the Align Self. So living the epic life is really about taking on the attitude and the questioning of what does it take for me, for you, to live an epic life, to add more fun, more flair, more excitement to your life. How could you move from day to day that would be different? Remember, how we move our body affects our mind, and how we use our mind affects our body. And you can begin as simply as And you can begin simply by brushing your teeth in a different way. Instead of your right hand, use your left hand. Instead of your left hand, use your right hand. Start on the left side instead of the right side. However you begin, start brushing your teeth differently. And that little incremental shift is actually going to shift the entire axis of your earth. Big promise for a little activity. But what I'm really suggesting is just break the pattern of your life. Just start interrupting the normal day-to-day patterns in little insignificant ways. Not too much, because you don't want it to be stressful on you. You want it to be fun. So how much more fun can you put in your day? And I didn't really come out and say it earlier, but having fun is a really big part of having an epic life for me. So again, don't sit on your haunches. Put this into practice. Test it out. Drive it around the block. Kick the tires. Tell me what you think. This is Daniel Denovi, suggesting you follow your bliss and live the epic adventure.